So it looks as though Arlington is also doing a little soul searching. How do you respond to that?
I think it's a good time to start that. Like, it seems to be the year of change. It's a perfect day today with the NFL team that we thought would never change, announcing to change their symbol and their mascot. And then we see, NASCAR tearing down a Confederate flag. We see all these ongoing changes. So it seems to be the people want change. Arlington should make the change and remove the Native American symbol as well.
You have a lot of people who say, look, it's not, we're not making light of this. We are honoring them by using these emblems for our NFL teams and our MLB teams. What's your response to that when they say that?
Well, I guess it depends on who's saying that. It's always like, I don't want to personally, as a black male, speak for like, oh, this isn't offensive to Asian Americans. This is honoring Asian Americans. So I always want to be considerate of, I guess, who's doing the speaking as well.
Do you see this as a positive step, at least in the right direction, where people can feel more inclusive of all races, all religions, all creeds?
I think it is a positive step. From everything going on this year, I think it's going to allow some symbols that permeate racism in our society to be torn down, even though, that being said, it's not necessarily the end-all be-all recipe to fixing the systems, just tearing down statues and changing mascots, but it's a good way to, shape the future so we don't have these symbols of reminders.
Do you feel as though there's a fine line, though, between, let's say, a football team logo from Washington and a statue that, in no way is a caricature, but an accurate depiction of a human being who at one time lived in this area and honored the land?
It's hard for me to speak on that per se, but it's going to end up getting carried away. We got the whole statue movement now, from Columbus to Confederate. It's going to get to a point that some people are going to want to, get rid of every single statue we have, whether it gets to Martin Luther King and JFK for some of their extracurricular activities. I don't know, so I'm not the appropriate one to speak on every single symbol of whether it's offends anyone or should be there or not.
Right. I noticed you didn't even mention the team name from Washington, D.C. So obviously, I take it you feel very strongly about this. And without a doubt, are you happy with the fact that, we're doing this interview on Monday, that the team is considering a new name? Cleveland, their baseball team, is considering a new name, or at least a new emblem. Does that make you happy?
I'm very happy about the team from, the NFL team. I felt like that's been the most egregious example that we've had. Like, there's always some mascots are worse than others. Like, some people could present the argument that's honoring. I don't think there's any presentation with the Washington one. And I recall when I was in second grade, I think this was not second grade, seventh grade. It was 2002. I watched this great documentary that was put on by Native Americans speaking about how they wanted that mascot to go away. And they created all these like fake mascots, like, would this be okay? The Los Angeles Negroes, the Kansas City Jews. Like, so I really thought when I was young, still in middle school, that we were going to see that go away sometime soon. But then almost 20 years passes by and it's finally happening. So it's exciting to see, but I can't believe it took this long.
Yeah, and Snyder did say, Dan Snyder, the owner of the Washington team, basically said that this will never change. I think he put out in a tweet a few years ago, this will never change, and you can use all caps. Never say never, I guess, in a case like this.
Yeah, hopefully it should work well for them too, because it seems like it's been one of the worst teams in the NFL since I've been alive. Like, you would have seen, like, they got to do something to change.
Right, without a doubt, they need something.
Almost like they're cursed for it. Like,
what is your opinion about some of the statues toppling now? There's a great debate about the Confederate statues coming down. However, I think a lot of people in this country did not know that a lot of those Confederate statues that were erected were not erected right after the Civil War in 1865. They were erected a lot of them were erected between 1898 and 1915. And that was in the heart of the Jim Crow South at the time. So I think a lot of people are getting an education in that as well.
Well, I'm big against getting rid of the Confederate statues as well, because I see it the same way, Germany sees like the Nazis. They were on a losing side of a civil war. Why are we, preserving these people or these symbols? Like, they have a place, but in like a museum and a history book, not in like, let's celebrate the losing general of people who fought against the United States in a civil war. Like, I don't see like the purpose of that.
Do you have any objection to seeing Civil War statues, let's say Confederate statues, on U.S. Battlefields like Gettysburg or Vicksburg or Chancellorsville?
Personally, I can't speak for everyone, but I would see that as the same thing as like a museum. Like in a battlefield, as you know, it's a historical site, so that's a little different than like, hey, let's put this in front of Arlington Town Hall and say, rah, rah, Confederacy.
What are you happy with the statues coming down? Like when you see like U.S. Grant statue came down in San Francisco. Now there's a man who led the Union and signed the papers with Robert E. Lee and Appomattox in April of 1865. Are you happy with some of the statues coming down, or do you think maybe the movement has gone beyond the boundaries of what they first stood for? Because a lot of people are concerned now that since this is happening and since it's perpetuating, the real message, the root of the problem where everybody wants to get to is being lost.
I would agree with that. You know, Jeff, our current political climate is so like, you know, far to this way, far to that way, everything gets carried away. So it's going to get to a point that I do see it getting to the point that we're going to start tearing down dead president statues, which I understand almost every person in this country, you know, especially the older presidents, were not perfect by any means, but we have to look at them in a historical context and not just say, okay, this president was a bad man. We understand. We should be learning that in history anyway. It's going to get to a point that, you know, some people want to abolish the police. That's not the NAACP stance, for example. We want to see the reforms. We want to see a just society for all, but we don't believe the appropriate measure is get rid of all police. Like, we're not taking it to that extreme. And personally, I believe the same thing with the statues. Some groups are going to just push it far to this way. Like,
Yeah, you bring up a good point about defunding the police. That they're saying defunding the police.
oh, not defunding, abolish the police. Defunding is another movement. Like,
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's hard to get that message because you're getting mixed messages when you hear abolish the police or defund the police. Most people think, well, who's going to, you know, if I'm in trouble, who do I dial?
I agree that we could have social workers or some other people answering calls to break up barbecues and noise complaints. And we're reaching out to our local police officers, the chiefs, and seeing what we can do to make their job easier, what we could do to make, you know, trust in society better. Also bearing in mind that it's the system as a whole. It's not necessarily, you know, that Arlington or Medford or Winchester have done something so egregious in this instinct. It's just the whole system. And I know these officers are feeling really stressed as well because, you know, it's not like the officers in Arlington have done anything in terms of, you know, what happened in Atlanta or Minnesota, even though we do want to see a better system across policing as a whole.
You know, right now there's a lot of unrest and people are feeling very unsettled, of course, with the backdrop of COVID-19, but usually out of situations like this, some good can come from it. And when this dust settles, I think a lot of people are going to be better educated, and we can move on from there. And hopefully we get closer to reaching that goal that everybody wants to reach. And that's ultimate peace and equality for everybody.
I hope you're right, Jeff. It seems like we got to have something positive happen this year because due to our friends down in Florida and Arizona and Texas, I'm not really confident about the rest of this year. I think COVID's going to be with us for a while, thanks to them.
Yeah, it's been a heck of a year. Hang in there. Hopefully you feel better, and thanks so much for your time, Zane.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.